For officially welcome. Hello, my name is Jen Brown. I'm the lead trainer and curriculum designer at Renew US. If you don't know about Renew, we will definitely dig into that. Let me know if you want to know more than what we talked about, or I should say what I talked about in both the Eventbrite and the Mobilize. I know we have some cohort members here. The biggest thing I can tell you about Renew before we dig into our class is we run campaign manager training programs. We actually have another one starting on February 1st. And even though I say that it is a campaign manager training program, we have actually quite a few candidates, folks that want to be candidates, folks that are considering candidacy, folks that want to work on different areas of campaigns. I'm just going to drop this link in the chat. And if people want to talk more about it, by all means, hit me up, hit Frida up, who is the recruitment manager for Renew. Manny, our coaching manager, is on the beginning of this class. And to get to the point of this class, though, we are digging into assertive communication today. Very quickly, I'm curious just to hear from people. If you could drop in the chat your name, your pronouns, and where you're tuning in from, and maybe one expectation you have about this next 2 hours, or I should say hour and 13 minutes. Are you coming in here because you're working on a campaign and you notice assertive communication isn't easy for the campaign? Do you know this is the skill that you personally want to be working on? Really think about what you want to get out of this. And while you're thinking about that and dropping in the chat, for the last decade before I joined Renew, actually, I've been a communications coach. I ran my own business where we reached 80,000 students in a decade over the course of working in New York, LA, San Francisco, and then internationally at the end. One of the biggest things that I noticed was people had such misconceptions when it came to assertive communication, as well as how they were communicating with people on their team and people in their existence. So when I started with Renew, a big part of what I wanted to bring to everyone that was taking programming was this idea of understanding assertive communication and how to use it in spaces of either electoral work or issue-based work. So today we are going to dig into all things assertive comm. I know we have 2 cohort members here, so you've done some of these activities. I will say only the beginning you've done. You haven't done everything else. I like to get everyone up on the same page for assertive communication, so we all know where we're coming from. First off, I just want to explain the 4 communication styles, and then I'm actually going to put you into breakout rooms to have a brief discussion on the communication style that you are most often. I want to really inform you that a big part of assertive communication is understanding where you're coming from and that it is a spectrum. Some people you might definitely be more passive around, you might be more aggressive around some people. So thinking about where you live on that scale of passive to aggressive communication is an important part of thinking right now when I'm going through these styles. So first and foremost, on this side, you've got passive communication. Passive communicators usually don't tell people what they need. They're not comfortable with what they need and want. They're definitely not comfortable with their emotions and feelings. They may just go with the flow. They may be upset with going with the flow and just not voicing it. The key with passive communicators, they don't lash out because of their lack of voicing their opinion, their feelings, their desires. That is a really important thing to remember. A lot of time we think that passive communicators are angry about being passive. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It really depends on that human. You might be a people pleaser. You might also just go with the flow. You might see yourself as a doormat. You might also just be like, I go with whatever. I don't really have a lot of, thoughts and opinions on this. I'm just easy to get along with. Passive communicators, the problem with passive communication is when it comes time for you to voice what you want and what you need, that can be really difficult. So on the other end of the spectrum, we've got aggressive communication. Aggressive communication is the exact opposite of passive, like you'd imagine. You are only concerned about your wants and your needs, whereas passive communicators care about everyone else. Aggressive communicators only care about themselves, very easily saying, I need this, I want this, I feel this. And at the same time, there's not a lot of empathy there for other people. There's not a lot of connecting with others and thinking, oh, how can this be a win-win situation? Aggressive communicators also are generally close talkers. They make a lot of almost intimidating eye contact. They'll issue orders versus asks. Aggressive communication is often put on people when it is not aggressive communication. And we'll get to that momentarily. So you've got passive, aggressive, and then in the center, but in the upside down, I like to say, you've got passive aggressive communication. So it has traits of both. Passive communication in the sense that you go with the flow, you roll with it, you do what you have to do. Aggressive, you get upset that you're rolling with it. You get irritated that that person isn't asking you what you want or how you feel. You might also lash out. Those people that mutter things under their breath, or maybe they lash out at themselves. I'm so mad at myself because I didn't say something. Why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I voice what I was feeling in that moment? So that aggression that comes in with being passive can either be external towards other people or internal, beating yourself up. Another thing that happens with passive aggressive people, they struggle talking to the person that they have an issue with. Very easily talk about the person, will never talk to the person. And then finally, you have assertive communication. Assertive is in between passive and aggressive, but on the right side up, not the upside down. Assertive communication is that person that can voice their feelings, their wants, their needs very clearly. And at the same time, they understand that their feelings and wants and needs aren't worth more than someone else. And that's a really important piece there. I think we misconstrue assertive often with aggressive because people that voice their opinions are often seen as aggressive when they're actually just being assertive. If you are practicing empathy and thinking about the people you're talking to and thinking about where they're coming from, you are probably being assertive and you've probably been called aggressive. Aggressive, remember, it's I'm just thinking about myself. I'm not thinking about the other person at all. Assertive folks also have no problems, and this is what we're really going to dig into today, giving and getting feedback, giving and getting compliments, delegating to folks around them in a clear and concise manner. Assertive folks often will be very comfortable with I statements and often listen really well to the other person because that's how they build their empathy skills. So thinking about where you might fall on the scale, I want to give a caveat that happens with aggressive, assertive communication. There's lots more to all of these styles. These are very basic. So what happens a lot of times is someone is being assertive and they're seen as aggressive. This happens when people are, say, you are working with women will get called assertive, will get called aggressive more than being called assertive. Women of color, that percentage goes up. Black women, that's where that angry Black woman trope comes in. That Black woman is not being angry, she is being assertive, but she is being viewed as an angry Black woman and being aggressive because of her assertion. So I caution you, while you're thinking of your own communication style, think about how you view other people. If someone is constantly speaking up in your space, have you gone, oh, wow, that person really knows what they're talking about, or I'm so happy to hear their opinion? Or in the back of your mind, have you gone, ooh, that feels a little aggressive, or ooh, that feels a little much? We have to examine our own biases around communication in order to be the most effective communicator as possible. So in this next breakout room that I want to put you in, have a brief conversation about where you tend to flow. Me, I tend to go assertive with the habit, unfortunately, when I get nervous of being passive aggressive. And then sometimes I am assertively passive. If I truly do not care about something, I will be quiet and just go with the flow. Most of the time, I'm pretty assertive in my work. I'm definitely assertive in my personal life. When I'm getting the gumption up to be assertive, sometimes I'll go passive aggressive and talk to another person about an issue or a person before I actually get the confidence up to talk to that person. So that might be what I share in my breakout room. So you're just sharing where you tend to fall, maybe where you see other folks in your community and why you tend to fall in those places. Notice how I said, if I'm nervous about talking to someone, I'll err on the side of passive aggressive and talk to someone else about that someone. So this breakout room is going to be about, there's 3 people per room, 3 people per room. We're going to do about 6 minutes in this room. Take a little bit, feel free to introduce yourself to the other folks to get to know them, and then share how you're feeling about your communication style. I'll see you back here in about 6 minutes. So after really thinking about your communication style, I think equipping yourself with the best tools to speak assertively and express things assertively is truly the next step. Before you start thinking about conflict or delegation or feedback, if you're not voicing how you feel and what you want in an assertive manner, then you're pretty much dead in the water trying to be assertive. You're going to default to whatever that style is that you go to in moments of nervousness or moments of anxiety. When I talked about being passive aggressive in those moments where I'm nervous, that's my default, right? That's where I go when I'm like, ooh, I don't know what to do next. So equipping yourself with some assertive tools is probably the next best thing that you can start to do in those moments that you feel like a little sinking in. I've dropped 3 statements in the chat, and we're going to jump right into practicing these statements in small groups. So you're going to be with some different folks. I'm going to recreate the groups so you'll move around and work with some new people. I want you to think about these 3 statements and practice saying them out loud in your group. So the first, I feel emotion and I want desire, tangible or not. If you cannot actively voice how you feel and what you want, you cannot be assertive. That isn't to say that you will always run around to be like emoting your feelings or saying your wants. If you're not aware of them consistently in conversations, then there's no way that conversation will be truly assertive. All conversations have 4 main parts, and these are all like conversations, public speaking moments, the whole 9. You've got who you're talking to, and that is who they are in relation to you, and also who they are in relation to how you and they view status of one another. For example, if you're talking to someone you want to impress, you're probably going to speak differently to them than you do someone you're very close relation with. So that who is really important. Where you are. It's not just physical location. It's not, I'm sitting in my office at my desk in Winston-Salem. It's, we're in the middle of a global pandemic and the end of a global pandemic. We're coming off of, I shouldn't say coming off, we're part of a very contentious political movement right now. We're at the start of some movements. There's a lot of stuff going on in history right now. And unfortunately, we're living through it. And fortunately, we're able to change and react in it. That changes how we are communicating, because how you are talking to someone else, you both have these outward factors. Have you had COVID? Are you worried about getting COVID? Has someone passed away that's close to you? Have you been an essential worker? Have you been part of all of the racial movements that are occurring in the US? Like what's going on, and how is history affecting you and the person you're talking to? So who you're talking to, where you are, what you want, and how you feel. Those are those last parts. What you want and what the other person wants is always part of the conversation. Even a conversation with a friend, you want to spend time with that person. You want to make plans to hang out again. That other person also has a want. Ever sit in a meeting and you're like, we got nowhere on this? It's because what you wanted to get out of it wasn't clear in the beginning, or you didn't express that, or they wanted something different than you did. And same thing with emotions. Feelings affect how you communicate. You could be having a great day and all your communication is super clear and high energy and fun, and you're like rolling with the punches. Or you could have some bad stuff happen in the morning. And when I say bad stuff, everything from spilling coffee to like a life-changing catastrophic event, no matter how hard we try to compartmentalize, our emotions come through. And again, this is not so you run around emoting everywhere. This is so you are aware of your emotions and you're thinking about the other person's emotions. Because again, that assertive communication is I win, you win. You're thinking about both people. So for these statements, the first thing you're going to do is say, and I feel how you feel, and I want some desire, tangible or not. Maybe you want a cookie. Maybe you want world peace, whatever that looks like. If you are like every other adult in the world and you struggle with naming an emotion, I encourage you to click on this link for the feeling wheel. It is really, really helpful to build a vocabulary of emotions. I don't want to get too far into my capitalism sex sort of thing, but we're told to stifle our emotions a lot of times and not feel. And I think that removes a lot of our agency and power, not being aware and not being able to name emotions. So really understanding how you're feeling. After you do that, these next two are assertive statements that you can make to another person. So I want you to think about a situation that you were either assertive in, or that you wish you were assertive in, I should say, or a situation coming up that you have to voice something. So for example, for I feel emotion when action, perhaps you want to talk to someone about an overload that's happening in your work. So you might say, I feel overwhelmed when you give me things at the last minute. Or you can air that to the positive. You can also say, I feel valued when you tell me I'm doing a good job. So you see, assertive is not just for these negative conflict-filled moments. It's so important when you are building a vocabulary around feedback and delegation, as well as dealing with conflict. The last statement is something that a lot of folks really like because they like the action reaction. So feel free to try it, see how it fits in your mouth, see if you feel good about it, or if it's something that you would rather not use. It's when action, I have to reaction, and I feel emotion. When you give me work at the last minute, I have to, this is not my actual working situation, y'all. This has been the example I've given for years. When you give me work at the last minute, I have to struggle to get it complete on time and I feel frustrated. Or when you tell me I'm doing a good job, I get to reflect on my own work and progress and I feel valued. What a nice way to tell someone what you need. So again, we're going to go into these smaller groups. I know people are like coming in and out, and some folks were like, it's interactive and I didn't know that. That's why I'm recording this section for sure. So if anyone does need to step in or out, got you covered. I will say for this, we're going to do again about 6 minutes, go right into making these statements out loud. And whoever wants to go first, when you get done after these 6 minutes, if you get done early, talk about how it felt. Was it easy to say, I feel emotion when you action? Was it harder than you expected? Truly say them out loud and truly use a period at the end. This is not, the last thing I'll say, this is not like a nod to don't up talk, because I think the idea of like up talking, going up at the end of your sentence, is a very gendered idea. I think that it truly matters if you're making a statement or saying something for approval. You are not looking to get approval from your group mates on these statements. You are looking to make them. So that is why I say it with a period at the end versus looking for someone to say, good job. I'll tell you all right now, good job. You win if you can say these statements. Good luck, and I'll see you back here in 6 minutes. I'll hit record since we're going back into instruction in this sense. I want to dive into feedback first. So feedback is one of those things that I think that folks either are really like, I'm going to do this and embrace this. And at the same time, some people go like this whenever there's situations of feedback happening. So in this activity, we're going to practice giving good feedback and constructive feedback. Good feedback, a compliment, something that person is doing well. By giving this feedback as specific, concrete, and direct as possible, that's how you're getting it in the line of assertive communication. For example, if I say, hey, Manny, good job. Manny's like, good job with what, Jen? Existing, being here. I might say, hey, Manny, good job with managing the coachees. Is that really specific though? Good job. What does that mean? I went a little more specific with managing coachees. Now I might go really specific. Hey, Manny, when you gave feedback to some of the coaching cohort, I saw a lot of them really take it in, reflect, and start using it with their practice. Good job. I'm voicing something very specific, very to Manny directly, using his name, saying as well what was a good job, and being as concise as possible. Yes, I summarized some of the things that he was doing well. I want to make sure he understands the behavior or action that he is doing well. On the flip side of that, from Manny, he nodded and smiled. When you're taking a compliment, and you'll see this in that activity, nod, smile, say thank you. Don't immediately go on the, oh, that's just part of my job. It's just this thing I do. That's where we go a lot when we're getting compliments or getting good feedback. We brush it off. That's also not an assertive response. So you see, it's on both sides for good feedback or compliment. It's how you give it and how you receive it. Now, it's the same with critical feedback or constructive feedback. If I'm telling someone, hey, when you did this, it didn't work. Did what? What didn't work? What's going on? You want to be just as clear and concise. Hey, when we did this recruitment effort, it was frustrating because we didn't have a focal point to put people to, so they knew what they were being recruited for. Next time, can we, suggestion about next time. So you see how it's giving that bit of like, hey, this didn't really work. Next time, can we do this? Or next time, can you have a landing page for folks to go to? Next time, can you try? Here's a suggestion. When you're giving constructive feedback, you're not just saying, hey, this is not good, bye. You're offering this space to reach success. So when you're thinking about feedback, the mentality that a lot of people have is the transactional feedback, right? The, hey, do this, do that, this is good, this is bad. If you really want to think about feedback in the most constructive and assertive way, you want to err on the side of your feedback looking more like coaching than looking like transactional relationships. So I want someone to get to success. I want that constructive bit of information I'm giving to end in, yeah, we all did this and it was awesome. So when you're also getting that feedback, when you're getting some, let's pretend that we always get really clear feedback. And I know we don't, which we'll talk about. Let's pretend like we've gotten really clear, constructive feedback. And it's like, yes, you get it. Our instinct a lot of time is to get defensive. Oh, I didn't have enough time to do this. Oh, next time I'll do this. Oh, the thing that I'm doing over here just got my energy and I'm so sorry. And here's an excuse and here's me being defensive. That's also not taking feedback assertively. In the same way as you take a compliment, say thank you, nod, smile, heard, I'll try that. I want to be really clear with this one. If someone is issuing the worst feedback you've ever heard in your life, and you're like, this person has no idea what they're talking about, still take it, reflect on it, and thank them for their time for issuing you feedback. You don't have to do all of the feedback you get. You should consider it. You should see, where is this person coming from? What are they thinking? How do they want to improve what I'm doing? The defensive response is borderline aggressive, passive aggressive, because you are making excuses for behavior when someone is saying something to you that may be done very assertively. Now, if you get feedback, because this applies to the activity that we're going to do, that you don't understand, it's vague, it makes no sense, it's okay to ask questions for feedback. It's actually really good to ask questions for feedback. It's really good to ask questions in assertive communication, period. Hey, when you said this, I didn't understand. Can you explain? Hey, can you give me an example of this? Hey, this part wasn't really clear to me. Can you go into more detail? The passive aggressive response is not understanding what someone is asking you or telling you and figuring it out as you go along, or not voicing the question mark that you have in your head. When someone asks you a question too, it's amazing to give them that feedback and clarity. It means they care, right? They want to take this feedback. So in this activity, we're going to make feedback as simple as possible. Each person is going to do a thing. You could teach the person how to do something. Please do not worry about your teaching skills. This can be how to put on chapstick, how to water a plant, how to make sure that you have cooked an egg. Like, the skill is not about teaching right now. It's about giving and getting feedback. So say I talk about how to water a plant, and I might say, okay, you take your plant and you see if it's dry, and then you water it until water comes out the bottom. And that's how you water a plant. And you might say, Jen, you were really specific and concise with your instructions. Good job being specific. And I'll say, thanks. And you might also say, Jen, I really didn't understand what you were talking about with water coming out the bottom. What does that mean? Maybe you want to explain it more next time. And I won't say, oh, well, you know, if I had a plant, I would show you, or I would show you the holes on the bottom of, I say, thank you for that feedback, and then move on to the next person. So again, everyone's going to take a turn teaching something super simple. I cannot stress enough, this is not about your teaching ability at all. This is about how you give and you get feedback. Err on the side of simple. This is how you take the cap off a chapstick. This is how you put chapstick on. Anything like that. Because what you're doing is you're not really testing, you're getting feedback on getting feedback, and you're practicing giving feedback. So we'll do, let's see, for this one, 2, 4, 6. We'll do about 8 minutes for this, because I know that Manny has to leave on the hour. And then that way we can come back, reflect, and have that full activity. I'll pull everyone back right before the hour. Again, everyone's going to take a turn teaching, and then everyone should give a piece of positive feedback, compliment, and a piece of constructive feedback, something that they may be able to improve upon for later. See you back here shortly. So say you've given feedback and you've got the feedback out there and it's assertive and you've said it in a way that's concise and specific and all of that good stuff. What happens when someone pushes back? What happens when you've said something and you don't necessarily know how to respond to what they have said in return? When you aren't able to just assertively communicate and be like, yes, this is successful, there are 4 really strong techniques that you can use within your communication. And that's actually what we're going to practice next. So thinking about these 4 techniques that I've dropped in the chat, and just as a reiteration for folks, I will send this video out to everyone in attendance. So I'll send a takeaway sheet as well. So you'll have these assertive techniques on a Google document. So you're not just trying to think of them while we're talking about it or reviewing the video. So the first one is a broken record technique. This one, in my opinion, is one of the most frustrating techniques of assertive communication. You are literally repeating what you said without adding emotion. You're not popping in any of that per my last email energy. So say you tell someone, hey, when you did this task, next time, can you think about this? Because our skills need to be this, or our level needs to be here. And they get really defensive and all these excuses. And you then, with using the broken record technique, repeat what you just said. I don't think the broken record technique works by itself. I think you sound condescending to the person that you're talking to. So I think that putting it together with fogging, it makes it so much more effective. Fogging is pulling out the truth and fact from statements, from what the other person is saying. So say we have that same example where someone is saying, hey, I did this and I would have done that. And I thought about this and sorry, I didn't do that. And excuse, excuse, excuse. So if you're fogging and broken record, you might say, I hear that you tried a lot of things and I need you to do this next time, a repeat of what you said. That fogging, you're pulling up fact and truth, and you're also affirming that person by saying, I hear you, and this is what I still need. I understand how you're feeling. Here's what I'm fogging with. Here's what I'm pulling up and holding in front of you. And here's that broken record repeat. You can see that also ties into number 4 on assertive communication techniques, the yes and. Yes, I understand what you're saying. I totally hear that you are feeling frustrated and I still need this done. And I'm still feeling this way. The last one is that asking for more information, questions to clarify. You've voiced your feedback. They've pushed back on your feedback. And then in return from that, you can say, can we talk about how you're feeling right now? Can you help me understand how to best help you? Can you tell me what you need to be successful? Asking questions changes focus. These are also strategies for conflict, to be completely transparent with you. If you're having any piece of conflict, using any one of these strategies will de-escalate that conflict, and it will also give the illusion and give the other person control in the conversation. Folks joke with me during this time. They're like, well, I'm going to try this next time I'm having an argument with my partner or spouse or friend, coworker, and I highly advise it. It's one of those things that we say certain things when we're in moments of conflict or getting pushback that actually escalate the situation. Words like but will escalate a situation. I know you're feeling this way, but I just need you to do this. That's going to encourage an argument and encourage a fight between, because you're elevating one thing over another and you're asking that person to almost defend themselves after that but. Another thing we tend to do, we don't take that step back to affirm that person on how they're feeling. If someone is speaking and you're listening to them and you're actively listening to them, so affirming how they're feeling, I understand you feel like this, and I hear you saying this, and what you're doing is you're encouraging dopamine production in their brain. Active listening is kind of wild if you are doing it and that person feels like they're being listened to, not just smiling and nodding, but those techniques of like repeating what they said or affirming what they said. A lot of times the dopamine equivalent will start firing of good food, cocaine, or sex. That is how much dopamine goes off in someone's brain when they are being actively listened to. So if you're in a conflict and someone is getting their emotions high up, and you say like, hey, I hear you and I understand you. Can you help me with what I can do for you to be successful, to make you successful? You're not only giving them a chance to speak up, you are saying that, hey, how you're feeling is valid. And I get it. I'm not going to try to tell you can't feel like this. Even if I don't agree with you, I'm not going to tell you can't, because your feelings are valid. So what that's doing is taking the conflict, however big or petty it might be, and really allowing conversation around it. Now, that person may respond with, oh, well, I don't know. And they might just need to talk and voice it out. They also might just thrive in conflict. So while we are going to practice some of these assertive techniques, some people get their like endorphins from being in constant drama and constant conflict. It is just that's where some of the stuff comes in of like, sometimes you just have to respond in the best way possible and know that you can't fix it. I've put a bit of an example in the chat that I want to go through before I send you off to practice this. Really thinking about this, you see the different techniques coming in. So you've got person A, I'm so angry about all of this. Person B, I would like to know how I can help. Person A, I'm just so angry. This is all stupid. Maybe they've just gotten feedback. Person B, and I would like to know how I can help. Now, you see how that's kind of frustrating. It might be really frustrating for person A to hear. Person A, well, you've done enough already. I mean, I'm just so angry about this. It's all just a mess. Person B then is using fogging. I know you're angry. How can I help? That repeat again. It feels so frustrating in the moment, y'all, when you're doing the broken record. It's effective. There's just nothing you can do. It's just all a mess. Person A is beyond themselves right now. Person B, can you just tell me more about what's a mess? You're asking a question. You're getting them to talk. You're getting them to voice what's happening. And then finally, that yes and affirmation. Yes, I hear that you are angry and I want to help. It feels strange to say yes when you don't agree with someone, I will admit. Don't think about it as agreeing with that person. Think about it as affirming them. So we'll take just a few minutes to practice this. What I want you to do, since you'll be in groups of 2, think of a situation. This can be maybe someone gave feedback. Maybe you were in a situation where you told someone something and they got defensive with you. So you're doing a bit of like, let's try this out. Maybe you're saying, hey, Leo, when you change this over to workflowy as a company, I felt frustrated because Google Docs is my favorite. And that's not the truth at all. But maybe the pushback that Leo is like, well, Jen, like I really wanted to do this and I think it's really important and better. And I might say, I hear you that you think it's important. And I understand that you think it's better. And I am frustrated because Google Docs is left in the ice. I would never fight this hard for Google Docs, but maybe that's the ridiculous thing that I'm practicing these skills with. The important part of this is to practice these skills over having a real conversation about something that is really mattering in your existence. So maybe you want to voice an opinion about pizza. Pineapple on pizza makes me really frustrated because the cheese gets wonky. And then the other person gets upset about that conversation back. And then you try to assert yourself. And yes, I understand that you love pineapple on pizza. And I think the cheese gets really funky. You're holding your grounds a little bit in that sense to be able to assertively communicate with one another. In this 6 minutes, you are welcome to practice it. You can also talk about these techniques, how you think they might work. I will not say ever you have to do something in a breakout room. I would say at least discuss these 4 techniques that are in the chat. I'll see you back here in 6, and then we'll dive a little bit into delegation and possibly wrap up a little early because I know that you all have busy days. See you all shortly. Because as I was just talking to Leo, this is actually our only second public facing class that we've had. We've been running a campaign manager program internally, and this is our second public facing class that we've had. So I think I'm going to keep the daytime ones a little tighter. I'll send everyone a feedback form too. I want to dig into delegation and spend some time on delegation before I set you about your merry ways and your days. So thinking about delegation, I know that some folks struggle with it for different reasons. It ties into that assertive feedback piece. So the thing that I want to just go through are some very, very basic ways to be assertive in your delegation, and then we'll practice one of them. I think the 2 that people struggle with the most is explaining why you are delegating to this person and what's in it for them. Understanding that part of delegation is a lot of times the difference between telling someone what to do and actually delegating. So if you are just telling someone what to do, generally speaking, that person is just helping you and it serves you and your purposes because you need someone to take something off your plate, because you need help with something. Thinking about like why you're telling someone to help you with something or giving them a task and trusting some delegation with them, that is where you're going to start building a relationship and being able to assertively say, hey, you are really good at organizing projects and systems. So I'd like you to do X, Y, and Z because I think it would be a great learning opportunity, because I want you to take this project over in the future, because reasoning here. So thinking about the setup of that, like, I am asking you, I want you, I need you to do this because of this, and here's what you have to gain from it, I think is a big piece of delegation language that can be really hard for folks. Now, I know we talked about in the beginning, like you're being aggressive if you're ordering. It all is in word choice. I say in word choice after I gave you some language to use, because we all have different ways of speaking. We all have different glossary of terms. We all have different languages. Words that fit in my mouth may not fit in your mouth. So that's why I encourage people to try saying things out loud before you actually have to say things out loud. Practice like you play, because then you can see if it sounds weird, like something you would never say, or something that sounds, oh, this is comfortable. And then you can wordsmith it a bit to make sure it makes sense with how you normally speak, so you don't sound disingenuous or inauthentic. The second part of delegation that I want to really draw attention to, and then I'll go through the last couple because those are a little easier, clarifying an outcome and what success looks like. I think sometimes we're like, hey, this is the end of something, and we don't really think about what success could look like in delegation. I think success is really difficult for folks to define sometimes. If you're not telling someone what a successful outcome is, you're setting them up for either failure, disappointment, or for them to not meet your expectations. That's assertive as well. What are your expectations with this project? What do you expect from the other person? You cannot assume ever that that person understands it. And a lot of times I tell folks, when you're giving expectations, saying things directly like, hey, my expectations for this are X, Y, and Z, as clear as possible. So if you're telling someone, hey, I would love for you to be able to water cactuses for me while I'm on vacation. My expectations for this are that you check them on a weekly basis, that you water the ones that need water and don't water the ones that don't need water. I would also like a check-in at the end of the month, since you're doing this for me over the course of a few weeks. I've clearly outlined the things that I view are measures of success. The last part of delegation that I want to draw attention to before I say, like, hey, communicate, support, share resources, ask them to feedback their understanding of the task, agree on a check-in point. Every week, send me a text. Send me a text when you need me. Let me know if you have any questions. Let's reconnect in 2 weeks. Being really clear with that as well. If it's something that you don't necessarily want a check-in, but there's a clear end date, make sure that end date is clear. We're going to talk again January 1st. In the meantime, let me know if you have questions. All of that needs to be spelled out as clear and concise and concrete as possible in order for delegation to be successful. If you're just telling someone what to do, like, hey, I want you to reach out, let's think campaign. I want you to reach out to all the volunteers and set up some call time for me if you're a candidate. okay, like all these volunteers, how many volunteers? What am I reaching out? When do you want me to set up call time? What's happening? Versus, I'd like you to take over scheduling call time for the next 2 months. Here are some things that I need for call time. I need a schedule for myself in advance. I need at least this many volunteers to show up. I want it to happen every 2 weeks at minimum. See, you're giving these guideposts so someone knows how to do this task. And then that way you've broken it down into pieces. So at the end of it, you can say, does all of that make sense? Do you have any questions about what I just said? I think a lot of times with delegation, we don't leave a lot of space for us to be wrong as the delegator. And I think like if you don't think about being wrong and you think about it as positive feedback to make you a better delegator, I always ask people afterwards, I'm like, does all that make sense? Do you have any questions? How did you, and then when the project is done, how did you feel about that structure? Do you have any feedback from me? Because that way you can see where you want to and need to improve with your own delegation skills. So instead, since there's only 3 of us, or 4 of us with me, instead of like popping you into breakout rooms, I'm curious just to hear if folks have any questions about delegation. I know it all kind of builds, like be specific, tie it with a behavior or action, be direct. Any specific questions about delegation or even feedback at this moment?
I wonder if you might be able to give a bit more detail on the part about like explaining why you're delegating to someone, because I do think that I struggle with like, I'm giving this to you because I don't want to do it, or because I don't have, even just because I don't have time to do it, feels like then I'm assuming that they have time to do it or something. And like, yeah, how would you phrase those things that sound more inviting?
Yeah. So thinking about why that person is really like, it's not just because they're a warm body. It's probably because they either have some skill sets that can lend themselves well to this, or they've shown some sort of like, hey, I want to do this. So I always think about like what skill sets they have that lend themselves to this. If I'm delegating because I know you, I might delegate and say, hey, you're really great at keeping track of things and logging process. I've noticed that in our workflowy documents. I have something that I need your help on. And so I've called out something, I've given that compliment to you about like, why you? And I might say like, what's in it for you? I think that this will really allow us to focus on issues that we have coming up in our next meeting so we can get right to the point as opposed to spending a lot of wasted time on this. Because I know you value your time being taken very seriously. So it's thinking about the individual and really like, it's not about, oh, I don't have time for this, so here's this warm body. It's like, for lack of a better term, why this warm body? Like, why this person? And I think that's how you also develop relationships, by calling out those. That's where it all builds in, giving that feedback of like, hey, you're good at this. Or, hey, I know this is a skill that you want to work on. Or, hey, I know that you're interested in learning more about this. So there are ways that you can tap into the things that you know about that person. If you were maybe delegating something to me, you could tap into the fact that I really believe in building that state power. So you're giving me something related to states so I can learn more and I'm more informed when I'm talking to the states. So you see like you're pulling out like one specific about that individual, and that becomes the why them. When you're thinking about what's in it for them, it doesn't have to be like a tit for tat sort of situation. It can be like, hey, this helps the greater mission that we're all working on. This helps us get ahead of a task, because no one likes their time wasted. No one likes their time wasted. So if you're showing a way that time is valued and important, that's a great what's in it for them. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions around this? Cool. So I will say in closing, I will say thank you. I appreciate y'all coming in for this. I will say that Renew US is working on more classes and programmings and things like that. We are a new organization. The campaign manager training program is kind of like one of our flagship programs. We're also, as the person that's doing a lot of the training and running program and designing curriculum, I'm very, very open to hearing anything folks need. I know that a lot of training is out there in ways where you are digging in or watching a webinar or being very passively involved in things. We will have some of those things as well. Like this evening, there's a fundraising workshop. That one will be somewhat interactive. I'm not teaching it. Connor Farrell with Left Rising is teaching it. So if you are signed up for that, awesome. If you want more information on that, I'll email everyone from here to make sure that you have that link if you'd like to join us. And then we're going to have consistent workshops coming up. It's something that I really think working in campaigns, both in electoral campaigns as well as issue-based campaigns, that the more networking and the more like, here's some hands-on, like let's practice these skills. These are something that we need as a movement, as a mission moving forward, because not just with Renew, but if we're going to really work to change the electoral landscape and change the issue-based landscape that we're in right now, then we need to help people feel more confident with the things that they're doing. So that's like a very big goal of mine, is like, what do folks need? Let's make this happen. Let's make things interactive and passive where you can listen and watch. So those of you watching this video after, please dig in to the activities. And then everyone that's here or on the email list, please definitely know that you are getting a takeaway document within the next, I would say 24 hours with all this information, plus a little bit more, because I always like to give a little research and articles and stuff to go to if you want to keep digging. That being said, thank you all for your time this afternoon. Moving forward, programs will be an hour to an hour and a half, because I know that everyone has very busy schedules and I don't want to lose half of the class because they're like, I have to go back to work, because I know it's during the day. Take care of yourselves and be well, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.